Hi there, my name is FixFox and welcome back to Factorio. Folks, the most recent video we did was answering the question on whether or not in Space Age Factorio 2.0 you can launch a rocket in 4 hours or less, and I'm happy to report that we proved that yes, you absolutely can launch that first rocket into space. As a follow-up video to that, I think it'd be interesting to then go to each of the planets, Gleba, Fulgora, and Vulcanus, and check to see whether or not we can land with nothing at all, nothing but the clothes on our back, and start from scratch and get some amount of science back to Nalvis from there. And so that's going to be my goal today, and we're going to start with everybody's favorite planet of Gleba. So with that being said, let me just take you on a quick tour of where things currently stand. We are here in this playthrough that I did for the 4-hour deal. It's, as you can tell, 3 hours and 46 minutes in, and we launched this very first rocket. Give me just a couple of minutes to go from here and then launch this space platform. And then from there, I'm also going to more or less kind of fill out this ultimate design here. I've really been streamlining a lot of this process to make things go a little bit faster. I've been cutting off supplies, for example, steel and copper down to things like low density. We're going to need to make some changes and bring the space back to life. But once we do that, we're going to build a capable spaceship, and I'm going to catch you back maybe in an hour or two or three once we're able to get a spaceship that will take us to Gleba. We're back, and I'm embarrassed to say it took a much longer in order to research the science necessary and to get an actual working space platform up and running than I thought it would. This is about 3 hours later, but we've been able to fill the base out a little bit. We did tack on a little bit of black science here for the military science, and we also have at this point white science being shipped down from our orbital space platform. That is where we currently reside. Here on the FixFox Orbital Command, making good things happen. I deem this ship worthy to be an Argonaut, astronaut, through the stars and take us to our destination of Gleba. Let's make that happen now. Making my way downtown, walking fast. Meteors passing, I'm homebound. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. And just in case you are interested, this is the general type of spaceship I like to make. I got my asteroid collectors in the front here. As I destroy them with my gun turrets, then I'll pick up whatever loose resources I need, and then I use these decider combinators to more or less take a look at whatever's on this belt here. This is my belt slash box, and if the number of different bits of asteroid chunks falls below a certain number, that sends the signal then back over to these asteroid collectors that have their filters set. And so I'm only going to be picking up the asteroids that I am lacking in certain ways. I'm looking for about 24 of these metallic asteroid chunks at any given time, about 11 of the carbonic, and about 12 of these oxides, and it works out pretty well. There's some issues with this. I'm going to reiterate on this later, but for now, this basic process will work. As you can see, we're almost to the planet Gleba, about 500 kilometers to go. And once we do get there, we are going to drop in, and we're not going to drop in with any additional resources. We don't even have power armor at this time. And so, with no further ado, folks, let's just drop on in and say hello to the natives and this beautiful planet that I'm sure is going to take us in many wonderful directions. Hopefully, all of them good. If not, then I'll be very sad to say that we will either live as a hero and return triumphantly, or we will die here on this barren wasteland. And the very first thing that I notice is that there's tons and tons of foliage here. We do have this sunny comb, which is a type of lichen with sponge-like structures. It will give us some spoilage if we were to take that down. Spoilage here for more of the sunny comb. There's the sting frond. It will give us some amount of wood and also this spoilage. There's these big boom puffs, which have pressurized gas sacs that will ferment decaying matter into explosive gases. And if I mine these, then they're going to cause a little bit of a problem for everything else around. I see no reason why I ought not to pick up a couple of freebies here. Any kind of amount of wood or spoilage is going to be useful. If this is your first time coming to Gleba, then spoilage is actually going to be a brand new resource for you. Spoilage, when you read the tooltip for it, is going to indicate the following. Spoilage is something that comes from any kind of biomaterial, and any kind of biomaterial, things like these different trees we can find, or some of the different fruits that we will eventually get down to creating, even the green science, the agricultural science packs. all of these different trees and biomatters will ferment over time. They will spoil, and then they will turn into this new product here, which is spoilage. It has a fuel value that's very, very low. It's not incredibly useful, but everything turns into spoilage in some way, shape, or form. So there's much to be done here, and we're going to take a look for some other opportunities in order to get our base up and running. Next thing I see here is actually going to be a new type of resource here. This is the copper stromatolite. This is a rocky formation caused by copper bacteria. And as we mine this, we're going to pick up a couple of different things. It's going to be stone, copper ore, and then this copper bacteria. The copper bacteria is our first introduction into freshness. You can see the white bar is going down very rapidly. We have about 45 more seconds before this copper bacteria will spoil and turn from this one product into a new product. But rather than going from this copper bacteria into this spoilage, this is instead going to turn into our copper ore. That's going to be important to get our early production chains up and running down the road. And as we did that, we did have a bit of science that was researched. We did get the heating tower that is going to have come about because we specifically were able to mine some amount of stromatolite. It says researched by mining some bit of that copper rock. And so now that we've done that, we're going to have a heating tower, which will generate heat from chemical fuels with very high efficiency. This can burn just about anything, and that is going to be useful later on. As I'm walking around, I'm looking for the brother or the sister to the copper stromatolite. I'm looking for the iron stromatolite. It's going to look very, very much similar. And maybe the best thing I can do to find it is not simply look for the color, because this palette, if this is your first time on Gleba, it's very disorienting trying to find anything. Everything just kind of blends in together and you don't know what is a valuable resource or not. So one of the best things we can do is actually take our deconstruction planner. We're going to put that onto our quick bar. We're going to right click it. And we are going to then click on this section here. We're going to whitelist a couple of things. So we're going to go for stromatolite, and there's two different types. There's the copper stromatolite, and then we're also going to get this iron stromatolite into this section here. That is going to allow us to simply click and drag to try and find any of those resources. As you can tell, there's some of this more copper stromatolite right over here. As we are walking through, we're going to be able to just use this to sort of find exactly what we are looking for. But for now, I'm just coming up on tons and tons of this copper stromatolite. We do see a new feature here. If you go to the mini map, there's going to be different shades of colors as far as map tile sets. The brightest of all these tile sets and these white sections here are going to be very important mineable resources. We walked by a couple patches over here, and then there's some right in front of us. What are these? This is going to be the Yumako tree. It says it's a Gleba tree that yields tasty, nutritious Yumako fruit. And so if I mine that, I now have this new Yumako fruit here in my hand. It can provide some fuel, and when I eat it, if I right click it like a fish, it's going to give me some additional regeneration capabilities. So we are happy to see that. Let's keep looking for some more of that iron stromatolite and see if we can find any other goodies as we wander through. And we have found something nifty. This here is a small raft egg. The biters that we found on Novice are not the same enemies that we will find here on the planet Gleba. This will contribute to nearby attacks. If I am to right click and mine or attack this structure, I will be enveloped immediately by some bad guys, kind of like the Zerglings from StarCraft. They're just going to pop out and they're going to want a piece of me. So we're going to wait on that for now. Not to mention there is a certain amount of spoilage that comes with the benefits of mining one of those different resource patches. And as you can see, we have found for the first time, not copper stromatolite, but the iron stromatolite. And as we mine this patch here, we're going to see that we've immediately also gotten a new research up and running. So this here is agriculture. Agriculture came from the stromatolite mining. We have this agriculture tower available. This is going to help us plant trees and clear space and more or less allow ourselves to build some farms, Age of Empire style, and use those bits of plants in order to fuel research and more. So bonus there. And then we also, as a result of that in the tech tree, we already mined some of the Yumako fruit, but this is now officially opened up to this new ability to now process the Yumako fruit. The Yumako fruit processing is going to provide some amount of Yumako mash and these little seeds here. Of course, the seeds will go into the ag tower. The ag tower will then plant the seeds for us and take it from there. There's also some copper bacteria processing that we can eventually do down the road as well. And still, I'm going to mine as much of this iron stromatolite as I can come across. I'm eventually going to run out of space in my inventory, but for now, I see no reason to not mine it and then come back later and waste time just trying to walk to these different patches. I didn't find what I was walking for trying to find going to the west, and so I'm going to start heading kind of more to the east. We're finding this brightly colored sort of yellow area. This is more or less sort of a high ground. This is going to be much easier to build on than the other section. What we were walking through on sort of this blue side over here is all wet, marshy land. With landfill, I think that we can build on that pretty effectively, but that's going to come more or less later. For now, I think that this is probably going to be where we start our base of operations. We are coming up on another one of the fruits that we're going to find here on Gleba. So we already met the Yumako fruit. This is going to be the jelly stem. The jelly stem is going to give us a jelly-like stem with soft, fleshy lumps that grow into wrinkled jelly nuts. When I right-click this, this is going to also give us the ability to then do some jelly nut processing. This is also going to give us some amount of seeds and then a byproduct of the jelly nut jelly as well. Also with that is going to be the ability to get the iron bacteria cultivated. And so you're kind of seeing that we now have from the jelly nut the ability to get iron, and from the Yumako, we are going to be able to get ourselves into this copper bacteria. So this is the beginnings of something beautiful. And in the meantime, my inventory is full because I've been just mining everything I can find along the way. The only thing I don't have a whole lot of is wood. Some trees, of course, provide more wood than others. But knowing that we want to build kind of more on this flat open plain here, it looks like we're going to have the jelly stem to the northeast, and then to the due west, we're going to have probably that Yumako fruit. That's going to be my plan moving forward. We are losing tons of hit points trying to clear out all of these boom plants. But again, we do have the Yumako fruit. As I right click it, you can see that my health is coming back. So I'm going to clear this out, and I'm not going to even care. I'm going to pretend like it doesn't phase me. I'm sure if I had some amount of armor, light armor or heavy armor, I'm sure that would be doing much better, but all the same, it'll be fine. At this point, I'm just trying to pick this up before it explodes. Goodness gracious. And another one. And another one. Okay. I'm probably going to continue to clear sort of here to the west because I'm going to want as much flat space as I can. I think that step number one is probably going to be getting some amount of power and a general feedback loop for the production of materials. While I can always go out and forage for the iron production and more, it seems fine to me if I'm able to just produce it myself and just use what we have found to get ourselves jump started into a base. Remember, with no materials coming from our space platforms and nothing getting shipped on over from Nalvis, we're going to have to get enough material, steel, concrete, iron plates, copper plates, in order to launch a rocket, and getting ourselves all the way up to a rocket launching pad? Yeah, that's going to be quite a bit of resources. We might as well get started sooner rather than later in that endeavor. Okay, and with that being said, I think that we now have a good opportunity to just sort of take stock of where we are at. One of the best challenges that comes with Factorio 2.0 is having to get new production chains that you've never had any information with at all. And all three planets, Gleba, Vulcanus, and Fulgora, you should be able to land with nothing and still be able to launch a rocket and get off the planet. And so let's just take quick stock of what we have. Well, we've got plenty of this iron ore and copper ore, and we do have some amount of stone. I think that that means that stone furnaces are immediately going to become very, very useful to us. We can make wooden chests with these basic materials. We can process some of these things, but for now, we're going to leave the production of the Jellynut and the Yumako alone for now. That's pretty much it. So before we do anything, we got to get tons and tons of these furnaces so that way we can make sure that we are making these iron ores and copper ores into plates of various types. And at this point, I'm just going to put the copper ore into one side, and we're just going to manually insert everything for now. And I've got so much of the iron ore, I'm just going to drop full stacks of 50 in here. If you like the even distribution mod, I don't even know if it still works or not here. You might as well use that just to make this go a little bit quicker. I do have the 2 choices for fuel. Well, 3, I suppose. There is no coal on the planet Gleba, but we have wood that has a fuel value of 2 megajoules per. We do have this spoilage, which has 250 kilojoules, which is going to last you all of, what, a quarter of a second? Bada bing, that got you not even one of this bits of ore. Of course, the wood's going to last for much longer, but it's not the best. And then down below that, we have the Yumako fruit, which is 2 megajoules. So that makes it very much comparable to a little bit of wood. And then below that, we have the Jellynut, which has a fuel value of 10 megajoules. So you're going to get the best bang for your buck with this Jellynut. And that's what I'm going to really use for all of these furnace setups. It's pretty good. And even a little bit, I think, is going to go a long way. And so we did mine just enough of it that I think that we can layer in just a little bit of free power here. And this Jellynut and this Yumako we're going to find is more or less as renewable of a resource as you can ever find in Factorio. So it does not hurt my heart to use that up right now. And I actually figure I might as well start making some amount of steel. I'm sure I'm going to need some steel anyway, so let's start picking up some of this iron plates that we're crafting. And let's just plop, oh, let's just call it half, stacks of 50 or so into there. I'm going to use the Yumako fruit before I use anything else to power this other section. I'm all out of the Jellynut, but I would prefer to save my wood. It's going to be useful for things like power poles, of which we're going to need plenty, I'm sure. And while that's going, I think it's not a bad idea to get power going. We have a couple of different options for power. If you would like, you can always just drop in a nuclear reactor and some heat exchangers and a couple of steam turbines. You can always do that. Of course, we're not going to do that for this challenge. I don't think there's going to be any problem with us going with a good old-fashioned boiler and steam engine setup. That's going to require the offshore pump. It's going to require just a couple of these extra pipes just to make this all fit together. And, oh, I see no reason why we ought not to simply start that process right about here. Let me work my way back to make sure that everything lines up the way I would like it to. And we're going to get this online right now. Ah, interesting. We do see that there is some wood cane right there. That was just in my way. I didn't even realize it until it was almost too late. We're going to find some other materials that we can burn. For now, let's just put some spoilage down. It's going to get rid of that. That's not going to hurt my heart too bad. And immediately I can tell that my Jellynut has run dry. It's a really good resource, but it's going to not last forever. For now, look how quickly I can use spoilage to put this down. Immediately, the spoilage is in, and it is once again burning very, very quickly. And these are coming right back up saying, hey, you gave me a little bit of burnt food. I would like a little bit more. And so we're going to go mine some more of the Yumako and some of the Jellynut just to kind of keep this process going. Like so. And like so. And so as I'm getting this set up, it strikes me that probably the best thing we can do for our situation is going to be to get some amount of basic base building materials good and ready. After we do that, then we can start looking at maybe cultivating some more of this bacteria that's going to help us do more smelting and more things. You would think that that's a little bit counterintuitive. Don't you want your iron ore, your copper ore first, ready to go? And generally, yes, but I think that we have enough starting resources here that it won't hurt my feelings too bad to just simply kind of get started with using this power that we have situated here at the top and making sure that we get some basic base building materials ready to go. Maybe a little bit of copper is going to do us well. Maybe a couple of these circuits here. And then there's going to be a lot of hand feeding going on in the very beginning of this. But as we do some hand feeding into this box, everything should be getting a little bit of material. And that's going to suit me just fine. That's going to give us belts from here. We can probably work on getting some other simple things. Let's call it, oh, a couple of undergrounds. Sure, why not? And probably, unfortunately, one more box. I always love it when I'm able to consolidate all my boxes into one single area, but alas, sometimes you just have to do the best with what you got. I will not be sad forever. We're running out of power. Let's just help that out just a tiny bit. Our power supply, yeah, just for what little we're doing right now, this one set of boilers is going to be fine. Later on, we can maybe transition into heat pipes and things of that nature. But for now, I'm just going to take these materials we've gotten, and we're up to 74 belts, 18 of the undergrounds, 3 of the splitters. We could always use tons more of these inserters. We could always use more power poles and things. But clearly, with a little bit of steel and a little bit of this setup here, we are already getting the basic materials that we need. And now being satisfied that I have these basic materials, I think it's time that we take a look at the tech tree here and see what else we have. Under the Jellynut section here, we do see the ability for us to get a new building. This is going to be the biochamber. This is going to be researched when we craft 10 of these new materials, which is going to be nutrients. Nutrients are very important for Gleba because nutrients are the alternative way that we power every kind of building in Gleba. You don't have power actually powering the buildings. You do need power in order to get inserters to work and things like that, but every other building is going to require some nutrients in order to fuel the biological process that's going to create various things you're going to need. Things like your Pentapod eggs, things like other biochambers, things like the different materials necessary in order to get your copper and your iron up. So to start this process of getting a biochamber, let's first take a look at, finally, for the first time, a Pentapod egg. Now, we have already come across this once, and I said that I didn't want to mess with it before, and here is the reason why. We're under attack. And in that egg, there was, as you can tell right here, one single Pentapod egg, just hanging out, just chilling. It only has a freshness is going to last for about 15 minutes, and so we do want to wait in order to pick these up for later. Once we do pick this up, it is going to sit here. You can't consume it. I can't right click or anything like that. So it's just going to stay here for the next 15 minutes. But rather than turn into spoilage when it's done, the Pentapod egg will turn into a little itty bitty, teeny tiny, creepy, crawly guy. And so we don't want that to happen. Let's use this Pentapod egg in the next couple of minutes. And maybe the best thing we can do is use that for a biochamber. Thankfully, all of the spoilage we have can be used to get ourselves something interesting for our building processes. We can go to this tab here, the intermediate products tab, and we can get nutrients from spoilage. However, it will start off the nutrients being 50% spoiled already, and so it's not a very efficient sort of a deal. 10 spoilage is going to equal 1 nutrient, so we're going to need, what, 10? 2 right clicks worth of nutrients in order to research the biochamber. We're at 10%, 20%, 30%, and soon we're going to be all the way there. And that's now been completed. And so we have this new building that is unlocked to us here in our production tab. This is the biochamber, 20 iron plates, 5 electronic circuits, 5 of the nutrients, 1 landfill, and 1 Pentapod egg. I do believe I have everything but the landfill. This has now consumed that Pentapod egg. We do still have 5 nutrients left. We're going to use that to fuel our building here for this biochamber when it's completed. Mission accomplished. Well done. And that has now also given us the next bit of research here. Bioflux, a combination of different plants that could have lots of uses. That was as a result of researching the biochamber and getting our first one built. We now have access to get the bioflux. Let's take a quick look here at our biochamber. Now we have a new symbol that we've never seen before. This is the little pizza symbol. That pizza symbol means I am hungry. And so when I set the recipe here for whatever building you want to make, in this case, let's just say it's a biochamber, there's this section here for nutrients. A building must have nutrients in order to work. You can see that right now it says, yeah, I'm accepting different resources. Eventually I can build. If there's no nutrients here at all, the building is essentially in the off position. Nutrients, it goes away. And otherwise, without nutrients, the building just won't work. We can do lots of different things in the biochamber. Rather than making other biochambers, which, by the way, you get a 50% bonus production, you also have the ability to do things like do cracking from heavy to light oil to petroleum. You can make rocket fuel with this building, and this building is also going to do all of your processing. Your Yumako fruit going into mash, your Jellynut into jelly, and then going from the Yumako mash into its various items like nutrients and bioflux. This is also going to be the place where you can put in a couple of Pentapod eggs and get a couple more back. And maybe most importantly for our purposes now, this is going to be where we can take this iron bacteria and get started with making a big, long production chain. That's going to be my plan in just a second. But it's worth noting that very quickly, my nutrients here are spoiling. They don't have a very long shelf life. And so with many of the different features here, you're going to want to do as much direct insertion as possible. Look at the Yumako fruit. It's got about 1 hour's worth of freshness once it's picked off the tree, and the same goes for the Jellynut. However, if and when I'm able to make myself a little bit of this Yumako mash, as we see, by the way, the nutrients just expired and they turned into this spoilage. As you can tell, we are going to put in a little bit of our Yumako fruit. We're going to do Yumako processing. 1, 2, 3. We're going to put in some nutrients. We're going to make that work. And whereas the Yumako had an hour before to work or not, this Yumako mash only has a remaining freshness time of 2 minutes. We're at 76%, or excuse me, 65, down to 64, down to 63. And so again, direct insertion is going to be the way to prevent loss of excess spoilage. Does it really matter? No. Generally in Factorio, you want to do kind of a certain push sort of strategy. You want all of your belts to be full up. You want to have massive amounts of production at the beginning of your production chain, so that way you never have any gaps and you're always making something. And while the push strategy of getting resources through these machines is still going to work, you're going to be more effective if instead you do something of a pull strategy, which means that instead of always having your lines full of resources and just sitting on belts and waiting to be used, rather than do that, you might as well instead use more of a pull method where on-demand processing happens only when we need these materials. That's going to be what we try and do. We're not going to do as good of a job with that as I would like because, hey, I'm still working out my process here, but we're going to make that happen as soon as possible. And the biochambers are going to be step number 1 in order to make that happen. Now that we have one of our biochambers, we're going to need several more. And so the best thing we can do is pick up lots of these Pentapod eggs. I think it doesn't hurt my feelings too bad if I destroy 2 of these right here. Although I am dying. I'm dying. Don't die. No, I died. That's embarrassing. I'll teach you to cause me any sort of harm, starting off with this heavy armor. But once I'm able to actually get some Pentapod eggs, which should not be that tough, then everything's going to go much more smoothly. Let's try having you get through that armor. By the way, you can always consume the Jellynut in order to make yourself go faster, and you can always get the Yumako to make yourself heal a certain amount. But now we have 3 Pentapod eggs, and that's going to jumpstart the process for getting more biochambers. And I find that as I'm making my biochambers, it's nice to have kind of 2. I only have 1 currently available. I'm going to use one of the 3 Pentapod eggs I have to make a pair. That's going to help me get some different processing here. The processing is going to help me get more nutrients. And so I'm going to go for the Yumako processing here as soon as this biochamber is built. Plop that down. I'm going to put a couple of the nutrients in, and I'm going to stick some of the Yumako fruit in. The mash is immediately going to pop right out. I'm going to just change the recipe here and just say, hey, I want to process this Yumako mash into something a little bit nicer for me. And as you can see, we're getting a lot of these nutrients, and we're getting it much quicker than we otherwise would have gotten it. So let's use these nutrients to hop on in here, place in the necessary resources. I'm going to need a couple of bits of landfill here. There's a couple. Good, good. And as you can see, we do get a production bonus. So once the biochambers are completed, you're going to get more biochamber than you otherwise would have gotten. And that feels pretty okay. Let me just make some more Yumako mash as I'm doing this. I got time. Let's use our time. 20. Okay, there's 1. Turning into more mash and more nutrients. Uh-oh. I always find myself constantly making a little bit of excess nutrients just because I never have enough for what I need. But soon, very soon, we're going to feel much better about this process. Okay. And we do have 1 more Pentapod egg. Rather than use that to craft this other bit of biochamber we want, we're going to wait on that, and we're instead going to turn this into a 2 Pentapod egg type of material here. So we're out of nutrients here. Let's go to this recipe. It's 2 times Pentapod egg. It's going to require 30 nutrients, some water, and a Pentapod egg in order for this to work. Let's get a couple of pipes up and running. And though we are low on nutrients, we're going to use the majority of that here, just enough to power this. And our last Pentapod egg is going to go on in here. And we're going to go from 1 Pentapod egg into 2. We put in 1, and here's 2. And now you can, down the road, make a little bit of a cycle where you're always just getting the 1 extra and then feeding the original Pentapod egg more or less back into this biochamber. That process is going to be quite similar, I do say, if I can say so myself. It's going to be quite similar to the process you generally find for things like Covarex processing in nuclear. And that's not a bad way of doing things. And so again, biochamber, if you're going to make a biochamber, you might as well make the biochamber in the biochamber, because then you're going to get a 50% bonus here. As you can see, we got 2 biochambers for the price of 3. Every 2 biochambers, you're going to get a freebie. You might as well take advantage of that while you can. Okay. And so now we still do have this 1 Pentapod egg. We got about 14 minutes before it will expire. In the meantime, let's use our newfound biochambers in order to get started with the basic processing of the Yumako mash. And we're going to do that here to the south. And I'm going to be doing this in stages. And this is going to be the best way I can think to help make this nice and easy for you. If you want, I'm going to try and include the blueprint here in the description of this video, so that way you can use it. The most important thing when it is concerning me is I always want you to try and use any type of inserters that are going to be effective, and then also working well to ensure that only the resources you want are going where they ought to go. And that means filtering everything. If you're new to Factorio, maybe you have not remembered our friend, the filter inserter. It is no longer. It was an excellent piece of equipment. And now every inserter has that same functionality to pick and choose what resources it's going to take off the belt. In this case, we're just going to make sure that we always have spoilage. If it does happen on the belt, it's going to go into a box, and we're going to deal with that box at a later date and a later time. Let's do it just like that. Perfect. Now we got seeds coming off, we've got Yumako mash coming off, and then we've also got some additional inserters that are here specifically so that we can get any excess spoilage out and into a new box. Just like this. This is going to be the very, very start of things. Just to make this a little bit easier to read, I'm going to get some power hooked up. And so this is going to be stage 1 of the Yumako fruit processing. You're going to end up using more of the Yumako than you are with the Jellynut. That's just my 2 cents. Later on, you're going to end up using more Jellynut. That's similar to the way that you will occasionally have more iron in the early game and then more copper in the later game. Think of it in those same terms, where you're going to be using more of the Jellynut up front, and then, or excuse me, more of the Yumako up front and then more of the Jellynut down the road. So this is going to be stage 1 here for our Yumako processing, where seeds are going to go into this section and the spoilage is going to go away. And then there's going to be some additional means of getting the Yumako processed fruit onto the belts here. After we've got the Yumako processed, we're going to then want to move it on to the next step, where it's going from a processed mash, and then we want to do something with that mash. And so this belt is going to do a couple of things. Number 1, it's going to intake some of the nutrients that are going to come off of this belt, and it's also going to put the nutrients onto the belt. We're going to do a biofeedback loop where the same thing that is making the nutrients for all of this to work is also going to be the thing that is supplying nutrients to itself. And so this is where the Yumako mash is going to be coming over directly inserted from our processing here into the nutrient facilities over here. And then once again, we're going to be doing mash and spoilage into different boxes, so that way things can not get overwhelmed. We don't want our processes to get jammed and overwhelmed with different things. Okay, 1 and 2. And as you can see, the spoilage here just occurred, and so it just went into the box. That is working as intended. And then once again, we're going to keep with the theme of doing the direct insertion. And now, so we're going to go from the processing into the nutrients into our biochambers. These are going to give us Pentapod eggs. Anytime you're dealing with Pentapod eggs, it's a good idea to have at least 1 gun turret ready to go just in case something horrible should happen. At this point, it's just going to be nutrients and then 1 single Pentapod egg to kind of get this process started. Of course, all of that, assuming that we're going to have enough of this belt full of the Yumako fruit here. For now, we're going to wait to get that started up until we're actually ready. And then look, we just have some single long-handed inserters. These are going to pull materials from one of these Pentapod eggs back into the other. You're going to want some kind of paired type of system. The pairs are going to help make this go very smooth, if I do say so myself. And later on, as you can see, I'm clearing out these modules. The modules are not necessary. They are going to be helpful to help make things move in a timely manner, but they're not going to be critically important. Let's make sure that we get water up into this Pentapod egg section in just a moment, and then we're going to more or less try to work on building the other half. This is going to be able and capable of making you the science for Gleba. This is also going to be tileable. Once I show you the completed level 1 section, you're going to be able to tile this up and get your science with Gleba as high as you want it. But for now, this is going to just be a very flat sort of structure, so that way we're doing as much direct insertion as possible. Now, remembering that our goal is to get our copper production up, I think that this is actually a good time for us to put in that structure here. And so from this Yumako mash processing, we're going to just add the structures necessary in order to get the Yumako mash into this area. There's also going to be room for the nutrients to come on in. We're going to have that up in just a second, and we want to make sure that we have a place for not only spoilage but also copper ore spoilage to come on out as well. That's going to be also important on this section, just because we don't want boxes to fill up with any amount of spoilage, which is actually going to be necessary for some other types of materials coming out of the base. And so at this point, we've done everything that we really wanted to do. We have found a way to make this chain that should be fairly closed off and fairly self-sufficient. Maybe the best way I can just kind of show what we've created is now by putting this little Rube Goldberg contraption together. It's going to take a little bit of nutrients to sort of get this whole shindig started. And then we're also going to be putting the Yumako fruit onto the belt, and it's going to go from here into our processing section first. Let's give this 2 bits of nutrients just to allow that to start. A bit of nutrients here is going to allow the mash to turn into something else. I'm going to actually pull the nutrients that would have gone into these bottom 2 sections. I'm going to pull those off. We're only going to be trying to get these 3 machines going for now. I don't really care if the spoilage goes into my Pentapod egg maker at the moment. I'm going to leave that for now, just going to allow that to continue. But this setup here, one of these biochambers making the Yumako mash into the nutrients, is going to be able to supply the nutrients necessary for Pentapod eggs. It's also going to allow us to feed the nutrients back into this machine, and then also finally into our copper bacteria creation machine. Now, very important to note that the recipe for the copper bacteria is only a 10% chance of ever getting any amount of copper bacteria. You could theoretically get very, very unlucky, and this could simply be a spoilage making machine. However, occasionally, not often, but occasionally, we're going to be seeing a little bit of this copper bacteria come on down here. It's not going to be until we are able to get some amount of the bioflux created that we're going to get the opportunity to then make this little ounce of bacteria that we cultivate grow into more and more and more. That's going to be another section in just half a moment, and that's going to require the rest of this flat sort of section here. We're going to start on the left and go to the right. We started from right to left. We're going to go from left to right now and meet in the middle, where everything should more or less be culminating in with these biochambers creating the Gleba science. But that is going to take place in just one moment. For now, look at it. Look at our little babies. Aw, the little copper bacteria getting all big and strong. Really, the reason why we need both sides is because this section is meant simply to supply the resources, the nutrients necessary to make Pentapod eggs. Over here is where the bioflux is going to come into play. So let's do a quick break and get back on track with that. In the meantime, I do need to go make a little bit of stone here for just half a moment. I think a couple of burners on this stone patch should do just fine for me. 1, 2, 3, 4 with a box. And let's just give it all some jelly stem. That'll take care of my stone problems for a little bit. Always trying to get rid of nutrients, and biochambers are a good way to keep things nice and healthy. And as I'm crafting some of these nutrients, I did just have artificial soil finish up. That's going to be artificial soil that will be able to make fake kind of wet marshlands for the Yumako and for the other Jellynut types of plants. That's going to be incredibly useful when we're trying to automate our processes later. We just have to craft 500 nutrients. It's amazing how quickly you can end up crafting 500 nutrients. I've also spent a little bit of time sort of going out of my way, getting landfill and a few other things I would need, because we are going to require a certain amount, and by certain amount, I mean quite a bit, of these biochambers. And so I've just been making a couple of extra Pentapod eggs. I've been trying to keep things on the level. So far, so good. But as you can already see, some of this nutrient value is already quickly being depleted. So up to 6 biochambers and more on the way. And that should be the final one. We're going to walk away from here with 18 biochambers locked and loaded, and this is going to complete the rest of this build here for us. Now, the assumption here is that coming in from either the left or the right hand side, one way or the other, we're going to have to find the Jellynut is going to come through this direction. We're going to use this to great effect, and it's going to immediately be fed into some Jellynut receptacles here. We're just going to split on the splitter, going to a couple separate places, going 1, 2, 3, and more. And ultimately, long-handed inserters, short-handed inserters, it won't really matter. We're going to get what we need, and we're going to walk away satisfied knowing that we're going to have plenty of this Jellynut after we get a little bit more mash going. So this is going to be a little bit interesting in that we have to have the Yumako processing on both sides. You don't simply have Jellynut on one side and then Yumako processing on the other. You do have to belt in a small portion of your Yumako this direction, and we shall in short order. Something like that should be fine. Probably want one long red belt right here. Yes, that should do quite nicely. But once I get that, then we're not going to have any problems. And in the meantime, I can always make yellow belts work in a variety of ways. Okay. And a couple things that you should take great note of. The actual blueprint is going to include some logistics bots. There is going to be some amount of bots that are going to be very, very useful for this setup. And I would even say necessary. Pretty much anywhere that is dropping the spoilage into, that should be a purple box. One of the great things about Factorio Space Age 2.0 is that I do believe that the purple boxes have a much greater value to me than they ever have in the past. Also, for example, this box here, this is going to be a blue box. It's going to request whatever seeds you end up dropping off. You're going to have seeds being processed here with Yumako. You're going to have seeds that are also being processed here from the Jellynut. So you're going to have plenty of opportunities for seeds and seed collection. And again, that's just going to help things stay perpetually motioned. It's probably not the right way of saying that, but it's going to keep these things working in perpetuity. How about that? And the last thing we're looking to do is to throw down our ability to cultivate more iron bacteria. Again, we could always, we're going to make a more redundant system in a little bit, but for now, this is going to make sure that we always have some amount of iron bacteria coming down, and we can absorb that into the bigger production later, and it's going to go through in a variety of ways. And once again, let's just do a proof of concept just to make sure that this is going to work as intended. So Jellynut is going to come down through this belt. It's going to be split off into 2 sections here. This is meant to be a requester chest, so that way we can do rocket fuel later. As you can tell, we do need to add a certain amount of the Yumako processing here. We do need to get started with a little bit of nutrients just to kind of help kickstart this thing. Not starting with these peripheral buildings, but starting with this interior section here. 1, 2, and 1. Is that going to be enough to get us started? I think so. And then this one biochamber that is spitting out the nutrients from the mash, it's going to provide the resources necessary for these top 2 buildings. I'm going to do just one more little section here because it looks like these are some hungry hippos. Oh, never mind. Perfect. And now the process should work. This belt is what's going to fill up with the Yumako. No problems there. And with just a couple of adjustments, we should have what we need here. Okay. And from here on out, then we do also have the materials necessary to get the processing completed. This is a long-handed inserter here, spitting out jelly all the way over here. And then that should be coming in hot right there. Why is that not working? Jelly goes here. Jelly gets picked up. Do I need to just tell you what to do, sir? I ought not to. You ought to just do what I want you to do. How hard is this? Oh, it's because I put a power... It's because I put a power pole there. Okay, I understand. I understand. It's all come together. But now we are getting, again, the materials necessary. Everything has got nutrients. Everything has got... Ah! Pentapod! It was in my inventory. A Pentapod egg just hatched. It didn't do a lot of damage. I mean, it killed me a little bit, but really, it mostly just scared me. Okay, that could not have gone any better. So everything is fueled. Everything has the necessary nutrients. It's all fine. The only issue at this point is that we have things on belts. I'm still working the kinks out on making that a little bit more on demand than the current system is robustly made for, but that's okay. That's going to be fine. We are meeting our goals. We do have iron bacteria coming down the pipeline, and any amount is good. We don't need a lot. We just need a little bit. The big thing we need at this current juncture is actually going to be here. And this is going to be these biochambers that are going to help us make the bioflux. Thankfully, much like we had with the Pentapod eggs, these bioflux recipes are going to require the mash and the jelly, and we're going to have plenty of those in large quantities, and so I am not too worried. So this is all correct here, jelly, jelly, and jelly. What the issue is, clearly, we just ran out of the Yumako fruit that was keeping this whole thing going. Okay, and so now we have one bioflux capacitor going here. Perfect. And here, because what's currently spoilage here is actually going to end up being nutrients that are going to be necessary, and they're going to be spirited away at some point very soon. We're going to put down a blue belt so this goes just a tiny bit faster. And then again, when you have any kind of hiccups in your line system here, it might need just a little bit of a kickstart, just a little bit of a jump start to get things going. A little bit of a push. It's going to help the madness go much better than it otherwise was going to. By the way, what just happened there, we did just end up researching bacteria cultivation, and that's because we did, for the first time, make some bioflux. Bioflux is a wonderful, wonderful resource. If we go to the Factoriopedia, bioflux is useful for a lot of things. Number one, it's made out of the mash and the jelly together. It has some interesting properties in the sense that if you are to right-click it, it will give you a burst of speed and regeneration, which is basically the properties of both the Yumako and the Jellynut. And it is also an important recipe in several things. For example, making plastic, making sulfur, making the agricultural science packs, making rocket fuel, making nutrients in a very efficient way. Bioflux is critically important. It's one of the best things out there, and we're going to end up making tons and tons of it. Just you wait. So in the meantime, we're going to kind of put this base together a little bit. I am going to throw down the necessary requirements for the science here because I don't see any reason I ought not to make science. The worst that'll happen if we make science at this point is not, oh my, I wasted something. The worst thing is just, it's going to end up being a tiny bit, and I mean a tiny bit, of waste turning into pollution. Now, pollution as a mechanic here in Gleba is much different than pollution in any other place. Functionally, there is no pollution. The only way that pollution exists on Gleba is actually through a mechanic known as spores. And spores are going to be the thing that attracts the biters to your base, whereas pollution makes biters on Malvise angry and they make them charge you and want to hurt you. The insectoids here on Gleba, they actually like the smell of the rotting fruit, and so that is their goal, to come and stomp your base down just because they are interested in some self-preservation and some eating. And we're not going to blame them for that. No, we shall not. But I can't say that I'm particularly thrilled with their choice of dining habits, mostly when they are the ones tearing me to shreds. At this point, let me just take one more quick second. I have one more issue here. What is it? Iron bacteria. For now, I'm just going to put this here into a box. If there's any iron or if there's any spoilage, I just want to make sure that I have an exit for all these things. Okay. And again, I'm going to have the cleaned up version of this ready to go at a later date. As you can tell, I'm missing a couple of inserters here and there. That's working against me to back some things up. And yes, I will have this cleaned up later. Okay, very good. So things are spoiling, but our goals are met. We now have the iron ore coming out of this section here on the far left, and on the right-hand side, we did have the copper ore coming out as well. So that's going to lead us to our next basic step here. This is going to be a fully functional place where we can make science. In order to pick up the science, we do need to get some more bioflux. We need 100 units of bioflux created before we can get the ag science. We are getting closer. We're about 28% of the way through. So for now, though, let's take the quick detour and let's get our production chain set up with our iron and our copper. And as I'm searching for a little bit more iron because I'm running low on building materials, including belts and such, I'm going to show us the bioflux here. If I right click on the bioflux, not only am I faster, I am also much more regenerative in my properties. Ooh, a piece of candy. And that's just going to help me explore a little bit. It's going to slow that process down. Not at all. In fact, it's going to speed it up drastically, which is my goal here. I feel like I'm playing Pac-Man here, gobbling up every little bit of excess I can, but it should be enough to get us started with what we need. Again, of course, you can absolutely circumvent this whole process if you want to. You just have to offload some materials from your ship, but of course, we'll do that another day, another time. And so here I'm going to set up a system where we do the biofeedback. Remember, it's going to be this bacteria that's going to be coming down the pipe. And we did get a new bit of research that is going to allow us to do this iron bacteria cultivation recipe. It's going to require some amount of bioflux. It's going to require 1 iron bacteria, and it's going to produce 4 more iron bacteria. So even just a few iron bacteria are going to be able to jumpstart this process. We're going to get everything that we need. I think that it behooves us to try and make a general system where we get a little bit of feedback here. We're going to have all products go out onto a belt, and the belt is going to be more or less kind of a holding container while we either have new items or items that are being cultivated here on the belt. We're going to have a couple of offboarding sort of ramps. One is, of course, going to be for getting the completed iron ore off the belt. But I do want, as the iron bacteria is coming off the belt, I do want a chance for it to cycle through at least one time, so that way it can get re-fed back into the system as necessary. And it shouldn't be that big of a problem. It's going to be much similar to the system that we've already kind of talked about and had in place. And really all it's going to come down to is making sure that we have nutrients and bioflux on one belt and then the iron bacteria on the other. So let's start to make that happen. Starting off here with the bioflux, let's get some amount coming on through the pipeline. We're going to get it going the correct way, like so. And then the easiest way to get nutrients are going to be knowing that this belt is going to come in this general direction in just a moment. Perhaps it's best that we modify it right here and just pull off some amount of nutrients. They're going to go on the far side. I could have a dedicated nutrient maker, but these tend to keep up pretty darn well, and so I'm not going to worry about it too much. And so as you can see, as I purchase just a couple of these bits of nutrients, they're going to travel down the belt on that side. That's going to be incorrect for me. Let's do it like this. Okay. And so I want bioflux on the close side of the belt, and I want nutrients on the far side of the belt, which is what you're going to see here. And as they go through, bioflux gets picked up, as does the nutrients. And now if I'm able to get just a tiny bit of this nutrition going here, I should be able to make some nifty things happen. Once again, let's jumpstart this a tiny bit. Tiny bit more. And we've got iron ore that was processed. It had expired from a while ago. 27 should be enough. I just need one bit of iron bacteria to start the whole system. Come on, baby. Don't fail me now. It's failing me now. Fine. Okay. Waiting, waiting. Aha! And I missed it, but at some point there was one bit of the, there it is, one bit of the iron ore bacteria that came off the belt. This is not going to be accepting any resources until this is nutrient devoid. And so for now, I'm just going to add again a couple of nutrients just to proof of concept this. So it's taking items on, throwing items off, working as intended. Okay. And then from here, then, after a rotation or two, you can see that the bacteria is going to turn back into the iron ore. I think that a simple splitter is actually going to be all that I need in order to make this iron work in my favor. Let's split off any iron ore. That's going to go to the right. And that's going to be where I then get my amount of iron from this process. And you actually get a lot of iron bacteria, provided that you can keep these machines fed with nutrients and provide you can get plenty of bioflux here. You're actually going to get a healthy amount of iron ore. It's not going to be huge smelting stacks, but it's going to be enough to fire off a couple of rockets here and there. So this is going to be where our smelting stack more or less starts. We are going to backtrack a tiny bit, and this is going to be our first start into a smelting column. I'm going to worry about powering this later. There's going to be plenty of spoilage runoff. I'm going to try and turn the spoilage into carbon. That's going to help the process go much better later on down the road. But for now, I just know that, again, proof of concept, this general idea does work. And that's all I really need for this side. Let's do the same thing on the other side for the copper. And so we've essentially duplicated this design here to the other side, except this time, of course, is going to be the copper bacteria. We're going to pull the belt all the way over here. I liked this setup a little bit better, getting these closer rather than having copper all the way out here. Just, I was thinking about less time on the belt for bioflux and nutrients and things like that. But this is, again, the exact same setup. The only thing that we have to do a little bit different here is, of course, make sure that we have the bacteria staying on the belt and the copper getting fed off. And it's going to do something similar to this setup, but we're going to expand iron to the west and copper is going to expand to the east. We are going to want to leave some space right about in here. I'm anticipating that this is where our rocket is going to be, or at least our rocket silo. And so let me get a couple of other things set up here. Specifically what I need to do is I also need to make sure that I'm getting our setup as far as long-term plants into these structures. This is going to turn on, and when it does, it's going to be very, very hungry. So let me make a couple of changes here, and then we're going to get our ag towers set up on top of these smelting kind of designs. Real quick, one change we have to make here at the end of these. I want to make sure that if there's any additional resources that they get more or less sloughed off the end. This is going to be the belt where the bacteria comes down, and if it turns into an iron ore, I do want the iron or the copper ore to get its chance to go back onto the belt, and again, not really jam. In fact, in this case, this is not going to be ideal, but we're going to circle this all the way back around. And so then we're going to put the output priority, or the input priority rather, to the right. And so if there's any excess, it's going to come on down. Everything that's not ready to go off this belt is going to stay. We're going to do something similar actually with the bioflux and such. If there is spoilage, we're going to have the spoilage go off to the left, right? It's going to go off to the left. And then from there, it's just going to go into a box. Later, the box is, of course, going to be for something else. It's going to be more or less a logistics robot that's going to take care of it for us. But for now, we know what we mean. We know what we mean. Okay. Let's split this off going this way and here. Much cleaner than over here, but we're making that work. Okay, so this should never jam. The point of doing that little extra bit with the belts and the input and the output priority is simply to make sure that things don't jam up. If this jams, you're going to be on a different planet miles and miles away, and you're not going to want to come back and have to deal with this one little jam, and maybe your bots can't take care of it or figure it out. Whatever the case, we want to just make sure that this is going to work out fine for us. Now, let's go get to those ag towers. Oh, and before I forget, actually, we do have some seeds that have been produced as a result of this big factory here. So we're going to want to pick up seeds wherever they go. In this case, it's going to be a couple of Yumako and a couple of Jellynut. For now, that'll work. Just something to kind of get us started with. And picking up some of these extra resources that we've been porting away, kind of letting go, because the ag towers do cost steel, green circuits, spoilage, and landfill. In fact, landfill is not too big of a problem. I made a trip down the other way just to pick a little bit extra up. For now, let's just go for 4 ag towers. That's going to be 2 and 2. And it's worth noting that we do have an opportunity. We could start making a little bit of this artificial soil. We mentioned a while ago that it was automatically crafted, this artificial soil for Yumako, artificial soil for Jellynut. That was crafted when we got into like a bioflux, I think, or maybe when we hit 500 nutrients. We're going to grab a little bit of this, and to do so, it's going to be 50 nutrients. That's going to take a little bit. Let's get started. Let's make at least 1 here with the Jellynut seed, and let's actually make that here in the bio chamber if we can. Oh, nope. It's not crafted in the bio chamber. My bad. Never mind. But we're going to make a little bit. We can only make the Jellynut because we don't have 2 Yumako seeds, and it does take 2 of either to make some artificial soil. But just in case, we're going to keep a little bit of that on hand. The ag towers have finished crafting, and you can see that we can put them down anywhere that's like a buildable sort of deal. They do have these tiles, and if you place the ag tower down in a tile, you're going to have to power it, and then it'll clear any trees or shrubs or bushes that are in that area. Right now, the tiles are red. That means that you can't actually plant anything on those tiles. And so we're actually looking for a place as we're setting these ag towers up where we can plant it and then also have that yellow sort of a deal you can see there. Yellow is good. That means that we can potentially put a little bit of the artificial soil down right there. Otherwise, we're looking for green. Let's go back to the section where we actually originally picked up some of this Jellynut, and you can see right there, orange and then straight up green. Green is good. Green is way good. We can't build on this. There's an issue. We would have to get a little bit more of our, let's see, a little bit more when it comes down to our, what do you call this? Landfill? And so instead, we just need to power this. We're going to find a way to power this as soon as we can. And when we do, we're going to wait to put in these Jellynut seeds here. Of course, again, this is where we got, well, this is the Yumako side. When we pick up the Yumako fruit, this should clear out the dead trees. We'll clear out the rest of the ground here. And we're going to see some magic happen as it starts to plant trees for us. Bloop. Bloop. Okay. And then if I hopefully have just enough room, I do not. I thought maybe I would have just enough room to grab away over this kind of marshy area. You don't really realize how marshy and how gross this is until you are trying to connect your power up. Do need 1 more power pole here and in. Okay. While I'm at it, I'm going to make sure that we've already run power out here. I'm also going to make sure that we have a little bit of our radio coverage. The radar towers do help keep an eye on things while we're away. And early on, I mentioned that there's pollution. I mentioned that there's spores. We're not going to have to worry too much about the pollution for quite some time. I don't anticipate that we're going to have any biter attacks in the near future. I just don't think that that's going to be a thing that we have to concern ourselves with. Okay, so we've now powered our ag machine. It looks like it takes more power than we really had in that one little steam engine. We're going to do some mining. I'm going to repower my steam engines back home, and then this is going to kick back on. I don't love using this fruit to power this, but it'll work. In fact, good time to have a burner inserter just kind of take care of this for me. Let's leave a certain amount of this fruit in here. Yeah, don't love it, but this will work. And mission accomplished. So, we've now powered the machine again, and as you can see, it's wanting to clear out all this excess space. It'll put these into the outputs. Let's make sure that we always have something to collect those outputs. Once again, we're trying to keep this area clear. And now let's put the Yumako seed here into the input section. There should be space. Oh no. Is FixFox wrong? Do I need the artificial soil? I do think I need a little bit of artificial soil here. This isn't elegant, but it shall work. 1, 2, 1, 2. Perfect. And the reason why I need to do this out here is because it takes very, very, very many nutrients in order to get artificial soil. I think it's 50 per artificial soil. Yeah, 50 nutrients per, not to mention the 2 Yumako seeds. Oh, and actually, since we're short on those as well, thankfully we are making more seeds as we process this fruit anyway. So this is a win-win in a lot of ways for us. If we simply were to try and just get all the nutrients ourselves by going through, say, spoilage or something like that, it would be inefficient, it would take forever, and we wouldn't get the seeds as well. So we're getting everything we need out of this. We got 63 of our 63 nutrients. It takes 50, 2 Yumako seeds, and 5 landfill. Not a problem. It takes just a couple of seconds and we get 10 pieces out of that. And so when I fill this section up, there we go. Now my seeds are planted. And it's a little bit tough to see here, but you can see just the little startings of a Yumako tree. And it's really just a scaled down version of the big Yumako trees. And you can see on the right-hand tooltip, it says growth 4%. It'll say growth 5%. And this will not be harvested unless I personally harvest it manually myself before it's ready. Expected resources, it says 3. Or once it hits full maturity, then my ag tower will automatically pick it up, unless the ag tower has got some sort of circuit condition that means that it's not going to be active, and we are going to be using circuit conditions an awful lot. For now, let's continue this process. Let's get even more of this artificial soil. This is like a really good spot. There's tons and tons and tons of tiles that we can cultivate here. Let's just kind of continue on this process, probably getting a little bit more stone so that we can continue this process. Funny how stone is probably going to be the limiting factor here. One more bit of artificial soil. Let me get a couple more seeds. Couple more seeds, you got it. Oh, there we go. And perfect. Yet again, there's another tileable space. A couple more seeds, hopefully, in the near future. Of course, it is a little bit hit or miss, but you're going to end up with tons more of these seeds than you really wanted or needed, and that's not going to hurt my feelings too bad. I'm just going to throw this down, take half, do that, just kind of help this process along a little bit. As you can see, we got a little bit unlucky there. No seeds for the last little bit. When they say 2% chance, they mean 2% chance. Okay. But now we can use this to plant seeds in this new area here as well. And the biggest issue as I'm trying to make all this work is that I'm now running out of time. All of these nutrients I've been crafting are turning into spoilage very, very quickly. Another 30 seconds and this little bit's going to be down. So I have the choice between planting or making more artificial soil. I am having a one-track mind. Let's get as much of that artificial soil as possible. We're up to 12, a little bit here. And then the next seed is going to plant right there. And I've been away long enough, it looks like, yep, the ag tower did actually harvest the 2 Yumako fruits that we planted. There was 1, 2 sections here, and it's already planted those for me. No problems. I'm okay with that. But I do say to myself, well, I need to continue to get my stone. I need to continue to cultivate this even bigger. The more plants you get, the more seeds you get, the bigger your patch gets. You get it. I'm going to spend the time to flesh out the rest of the space. I'll show you what it looks like in just half a second. Drat. How many are left? 3? That's not too bad. I can handle that. Bada bing, bada boom. More to come. Still more. Perfect. Wait, how much stone? 56. That'll be fine. And as I'm coming back here and finishing this up, I see that this growth is at 98%, and immediately we see that we are starting to harvest these fruits. I'm actually going to kill the power here because I don't want to harvest these fruits at this current juncture. I'm fine to let them be at 100%. That's not really going to hurt my feelings. I'm going to take all this output that's here, and we're only going to hook this back up once I'm convinced that there's no need for this Yumako at this time. So right now, we just don't want this to be powered on as far as taking materials out. And perhaps the best way I can do that is use some red circuitry wire to make some unique conditions. That's going to help us out. But as I'm doing that, let me just finish off my artificial process here, because at this point we've got, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections that are ready to go. Yeah, we could probably use just a tiny bit more. Finishing off this one and this one. And we'll get started on this next one. One more bit, not too far away. Now I'm going to spare you some of the boring details, but I was just doing a little bit of work on this kind of on-demand system here. And the biggest issue I'm running into is this, is that if I'm using the enable-disable circuit connection on these ag towers, it's going to turn off both the plant function and the pickup function. And if I am harvesting plants, but I'm not planting plants, that's going to be a problem. I need to plant whatever seeds I have, and I need to just say to myself, look, I'm only going to pick up stuff when I really, really need to. And maybe the best thing I can do, and the thing that I think is going to work the best, is actually just to put down 2 towers. And I'm going to, in the output section here, just put, let's call it some iron plates. I'm going to remove the inserter, so that way this tower is always only going to plant seeds. We're going to find a way to make sure that only seeds go into this tower. And for now, I'm not going to plant. Well, I guess I could power this tower. And so you see it's blocked in the output section. So this tower is never, ever going to pick up any of these fruits. Never. This one is going to be the one that does the outputs. And so this is the tower that I always need to more or less wire up as an on-off sort of switch to whether or not I have fruit in there. So I'm going to hit enable disable on not this ag tower, but on this one. And I'm going to say, look, if the Yumako fruit is 50 or greater, then I'm going to be disabled. And actually, I got that backwards. Less than, greater than. If powered, this is going to start pulling plants because this is currently empty. And that is actually what I want. Okay. I'm just going to do it a little bit closer to home. How about like this? Whoops. Okay. And so if this box has what I'm looking for, then it is going to pick up 1 plant here. I'm going to add just enough fruit so that way this stops working. I'm going to limit the box because as you can see, it's already picked up more fruit than I really wanted it to pick up. I don't like that because now the fruit is spoiling in the output section, even though it's got 50. Oh, equal or greater to. So I should actually just go like that. Whoops, my bad. So let me just fix that. And the conditions have been reset. The fruit has been regrown. And now it's going to pick up exactly 50. I'm going to make sure that we get exactly the amount of fruit that we were looking for in the first place here. And even when I have no output sections here and the fruit is just waiting in this box, at worst, we're only going to have 50 fresh bit of Yumako fruit ready to go. And so this one tree is standing alone. This ag tower is going to be the one that plants all the stuff. And then we are back in action. The trees are going to maintain the freshness of the fruits until finally picked. There's going to be this one bit of buffer here that's going to prevent the fruits from all spoiling. It's going to be just the top of the fruits more or less spoiling. And so we're going to continue to make some seeds and try and get this process smoothed out as quickly as we can. But the long and short of it is that from here, it's going to be something like a belt, or maybe we could use a train to get the materials and the raw fruit from the field all the way over here up to our production over here. For now, I don't know. I don't think I have enough material to really make a train make the most sense. Yeah, and since I started off with nothing, it's going to be tons of steel. It's going to be lots of steel for engines and such. Do I even have trains researched? I don't even have trains researched. Well, nothing says that we can't research things still back on Now Vs. Anyway, we're going to get this figured out as far as what is the best way of getting these fruits transferred over. I think it might be trains. But then there's an issue, because if you're doing it via train, then you're still going to have problems with the fruit simply because it's going to be spoiling in the car until used. And so your on-demand system is not going to be so on-demand now, is it? I'm going to figure out a good iteration, and I'll check back in with you in just a second. And so again, I'm doing more of like a proof of concept sort of a deal here, but I'm rigging up this inserter to only be enabled when the Yumako fruit is not present in the machine out here. So right now, this is the Yumako processing here. This is going to just kind of feed this little ecosystem. And the real reason I'm even doing this at all is that this does give me seeds. And if seeds go to here, that means that more trees get planted, and that should be valuable for me down the road. And then any excess seeds over time, that's going to help us get more of our kind of call it not landfill, but oh, what's it called? It's not landfill. Our artificial processing sort of a deal. As you can tell, we've immediately chomped down one of these trees. It's going back from disabled by control behavior to item ingredient shortage. And so only when this box is completely empty, or rather under 50 of these Yumakos, is this going to trigger to eat another one. I guess I could actually lower this from 50. It's got to be less than, let's call it less than 10. Yeah, so when this box gets down to less than 10, then I'm going to pick another one of these Yumako trees. And for now, things are going just nice and slow. We're not having any issues. This is being fed. This is ultimately going to give us the opportunity to get more of these seeds. And then we have outputs for any and all of this spoilage. And even making spoilage right now is not really going to hurt my feelings. You may think to yourself, wow, spoilage, that's bad. Not really. So everything has a use. Spoilage can be turned into carbon later. It'll be fine. It will be fine. And again, the only opportunity cost is spores in the air, which is similar to pollution. Let me just take a quick look at that, by the way. I've got the pollution tab turned off here. It's turned into not pollution, but spores. When I left click on spores, you can see how big my spore cloud is. And I believe, actually, that this is enemies, 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 enemies. When the spore cloud goes over them, they're going to be real mad. So my Yumako processing is getting a little bit bigger than I would like, but overall, it'll work out okay. 25, yeah. And still planting new little baby trees. I don't hate this situation. I truly don't. Oh, but this is a hiccup I didn't anticipate. I think I need... Let's see. I think I need to read whether or not this is working. I don't need to read the contents. I need to stop this. I need to check to see if this is working or not. If it is working... If it's not working, that's not necessarily a problem. Maybe I just need to read the recipe finished. Outputs for the given signal, 1 tick. Let me think about this. Okay, and so I've determined that I do just want to have read contents, ingredients, products, trash slots, things like that. And I want to make sure that Yumako mash is, if it's ever at 0, then we send more of this product. And so it's going to send all the different signals. I'm going to say enable or disable if the Yumako is less than... or if the Yumako mash is less than 1. That's going to be when I kick on and send some more products down the way. And then it's also going to have a little bit of a buffer sort of a deal anyway. Yumako processing, no. Mash. I'm looking for the mash. So right now, mash is at 0, and so this should work. As soon as there's some amount of mash sitting in here, locked and loaded, ready to go on to the next machine, then this should turn off. It's getting rid of it, and so the controls are met. Ag tower is not picking up anything because it doesn't have a fully ready Yumako tree? That's not correct. Turns on when the Yumako fruit is less than 10. Buddy, it's less than 10. It's less than 10 item ingredient shortage? Hold on. Are you telling me that this is not going to be able to pick up fruit from the other ag tower? Is that what you're telling me? If that's the case, then this whole thing is completely non-functional. Because I'm really hoping for 2 ag towers to kind of make this work, but maybe there's another solution that I'm just not aware of. Yeah, because if this is saying, look, I didn't plant it and so I'm not going to pick it up, that's not going to work for me. This whole thing might be trashed. Back to the drawing board. I suppose that I can do the same thing here. And enable, disable. No, but that still leads to the same problem. If I'm enabling and disabling on this tower, or this tower even, then it's not going to work as intended. I got a plan. As I'm turning the power back on because it ran out, I just realized, why don't I have a car? Like, I know that a car probably doesn't make a lot of sense in a lot of places, but it might make sense in some. Huh. Anyway, I'm going to take a look at doing that real quick. I think I've decided that I just need to make sure that I do have the one tower. The one tower is going to go, but I'm going to limit the output by half. I'm going to keep one iron plate in here, and then the other bit's going to go here. That way, whenever seeds come in, they should still work. Whoa! Unless I forget to do this. Let's make sure that it's an iron plate is blacklisted. So everything but iron plates is going to go in there. Yeah, that'll do fine. And let's limit the chest size to only 50. And then from there, I don't know. Maybe it makes sense just to have half of the belt only working at any given time. Like when we do this, it's going to send it. And maybe then I can even get the other circuit condition set up to maybe this arm or maybe even this arm. But the problem is again, once the tree is picked, you've already got a problem. This is going to be a bottleneck, but I think it was going to be a bottleneck either way. Yeah, and so we're just going to have to plan on using at least 50 Yumako fruit every hour. Remaining time, 1 hour. Yeah, I think that shouldn't be any problem. So, all right, I'm trying to over-engineer something that should be a lot more simple. Let's just take it from there and get this all back to the top. Now, the issue is that I can build on certain structures, but in the marshy areas I can't. I do have a certain amount of my stone that I can turn into landfill. I'd prefer to use as little of it as possible, but you can see kind of where you can and can't go. You can't go in the dark blue sections, but I can probably go up and around and through and belt something over here. It's nice to know I have a little bit of landfill just in case there's a couple of gaps I could really take advantage of. But we're going to find a way to get back from here all the way back home before we kind of turn this thing on and go from there. And this should finish up getting everything connected. So what we got here is a very, very long, winding sort of connection all the way. This looks so dumb. All the way to over here. And of course, I haven't made the belts connect just yet. I want to hold off until I'm completely ready. The biggest issue I'm going to have now is that unfortunately, I'm going to need a second belt that follows the same path all the way through the weirdness, because it's got to drop the seeds back off. You don't want to keep making trips back out just to plant seeds. You want this to be automated. And I just convinced myself as to why this is the worst system. And truly, you actually do want rails. Yeah, a train with a couple of slots where the seeds can go in. That's ideal. So a mistake, sure. But for now, this will work. And we're going to get the automation down just a little bit more in the future. Okay, so now everything that we just did over here to the west with the Yumako, we now need to do somewhere here in the east, either down here or up here with the Jellynut. So let's just start to make that happen. And we did end up going down to the south sort of area. So we're going to be call it southeast of our starting area. This is going to be a spot where I don't really need to do any kind of this agriculture. So I did figure it out with these towers. If it's red, you can never cultivate that. If it's yellow, you can cultivate that with a certain amount of your artificial soil. And then of course green, hey, green is just good to go. Oh, it's good to go. So we're going to allow a lot of these plants to stay up. I don't need to just erase everything right now, but we're going to start working on processing some of this so we can get some seeds and then get this all back home. And we are up and running. So it's not much, but even just this one tower is doing a lot to clear all this out. There's plenty of this material available, and we're just going to have to deal with one full side of the belt being ready to go. And then this is more or less going to be my buffer. Yeah, pretty much more or less going to be my little buffer. And so product is slowly going to start flowing in. We're going to get the product going for the Yumako as well, and let's make this thing turn on. All right, and we are getting it in. As you can tell right now, there is not a lot of issue. The freshness of these items that are currently on the belt, they're still like 55 minutes. That's going to be okay. As you can see, we are bringing in the Yumako fruit for the processing. That is starting off this general process with a little bit more nutrients. We're going to be able to kickstart this first section here. Just enough nutrients here to spit out. Close. Very, very close. And you're going to see this side of the belt starting to come alive. Now, I did split the Yumako fruit from just being here only to also being here. Unfortunately, 50% of the resources going here is not ideal. We would prefer to have more of the Yumako fruit over starting on the right hand side, but in the meantime it's going to be okay because this is going to back up quickly, and then it's going to be 100% of the Yumako fruit going to the right hand side. That just means that this section's always going to be primed for something nice, and that is okay. Alrighty, this is going to turn on as soon as the resources get down the way. Let's just be patient. Everything will work in due time. And then let's just double check what's going on over here. Again, we need to restart the process just a tiny bit. Tiny little jump start. And this is back up and running. This should start to work. Yep, and only one side is working at the moment, and that's okay. Oops, this one is incorrect. We need to feed the materials back into ourselves. And slowly but surely, we're going to start seeing magic. Things are going to start to turn on. Okay. And in fact, as you can tell, we're even getting the bioflux down here. At some point, the corner pockets, the iron and the copper are going to turn on. The copper just turned on. The iron's been on for a second. We're going to see this system roar back into life. Excess nutrients are getting down the belt. And I do have one major issue, and that is that while I'd love to continue to just watch this go because it's something of a miracle and a marvel in and of itself, I do need to get a couple of Pentapod eggs. Just one or two is going to help me get this jump started. So let me grab that really, really quickly. We're at 68% on the agricultural science production, and that's because, of course, we are making some amount of the bioflux. We need 100 bioflux in order to make that a reality. Where is the nearest spider base? It looks like it's actually to the... Is that it? Nope. It's going to be back to the west. Let's go back west and just rush as fast as we can. We're probably going to have the agricultural science pack get researched before we get there and back. But as little as downtime as possible, just starting off on the right foot feels worthwhile to me. 88%. It's coming. Here it comes. Okay, and do I even have enough ammunition? We've already seen what happens when FixFox doesn't have enough ammunition. Bit of a problem there, don't you think? Aha. There we go. Pentapods everywhere. And we're going to make this work with just our one single Pentapod egg. That'll do me just fine. Ag science has been completed. We are out of the Yumako fruit. We need to get that up and running, but we do have the general process here for our biochambers up and running. Before I do anything else though, let me drop off one single Pentapod egg here. And with agricultural science finished, we have these labs that are ready to, again, roar to life. And it looks like we have an issue. What's the problem here? We gotta get rid of some spoilage. There's been some issues with spoilage, but now these machines are turning on. And now that there's at least one Pentapod egg in both sides, I am going to get the means to move the Pentapod eggs over to the science bays up and running. And these are going to feed off of each other. Excess is going to go here. And folks, we've got it. We've got our first agricultural science created. Not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. Where's this science supposed to drop off? I think we might have made a mistake somewhere. It's okay. We're just going to do it like this. And hey presto, we've got science. Now we do still need to get this science up into a rocket. And right now, all of this science that we make is going to just spoil. It's going to turn into spoilage. It's going to take, it looks like, 45 minutes for this agricultural science to go down. But in the meantime, that means that these Pentapod eggs are going to hopefully stay a little bit fresher than they otherwise would have. Remember that we still have major issues with the Yumako. We got to go grab more of that. Thankfully, there's some seeds. That's going to help us either agriculturally get the artificial soil, or it's going to help us in some other way. Yeah, 8 seeds so far. Let's go make these work. Let's go plant these so that this belt can be an unending supply of material. Bringing some of this out, trying to increase a little bit more of this. And the only thing I want is for this to be set up similarly there. With a little bit of luck and a little bit of effort, we can get stuff planted. As you can see there, there's 2 plantations right there. And soon we're going to get some more material ready to go. On this big, long belt here, let's make it happen something like that. And I don't see any reason why I ought not to chop down these forests of Yumako trees. That's just going to, again, kind of help me get started with my process. A little bit of jump start is going to be actually a bit of a feature on pretty much all of the planets. Knowing that you can get the process going, but there's also a plethora of resources. There's no planet I feel like the developers just left you out to dry. All of them seem to have some excess that you can go find if you need to. On Fulgora, you can find the Holminium sort of roots or plants or whatever you call them. On Vulcanus, you do have some free carbon, some free rocks around. And then here on Gleba, there is enough free Jellynut. And I really think you needed the free Jellynut. I think you really needed the free Yumako, just so that way you could kind of get a sense for how this production chain is supposed to work. If you didn't have that, I could see it being real easy to get lost and just not feel comfortable at all in moving forward on your own. The reason that these stopped was because there was too much downtime and the nutrients that had already been crafted did spoil. And so now, hopefully again, with a little bit of a push, a little bit of a jump start, the spoilage is not going to last too much longer. I'm going to more or less try and set up a couple of redundancies to try and prevent that from being an issue. In the future, when you have bots, you can always just have some very small amount of nutrients always being pulled off the belt, and then that can be replaced as time goes on. It's a good system. It works really well. I wouldn't call it robust necessarily, but there's some simple things you can do to help things go your way. Let's see, and there's more seeds, tons of Jellynut over here, 4 and 4. And then there's also lots and lots up here. Oh wait, pentapods. Didn't I go out and get some pentapod eggs? What happened to those? Ah, they're used to make science. Perfect. Okay. Whew. For a second, I was worried that we would have a repeat of that time that I almost burned the house down. Not a good situation. Okay. But so long as we can keep these belts at a good time and space, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. And most importantly, perhaps, because there's all these inserters that are supposed to take only spoilage out, nothing should get jammed. We're making bioflux, we're making science, we're making tons of this. Aha! I found an error. We do need to add spoilage because it looks like these machines are going to kick out the spoilage from the nutrients once they're all said and done. So let's do that now. Kicking out spoilage. Let's just say it's going to go right about here for both of these structures. To the right. Spoilage. just like so. Okay, perfect. Well, I don't think I can be too mad about that. And so I have pulled off some of this Jellynut stem off of the main belt, and I'm going to pull off just a little bit more. This is going to be my primary fuel source, and this is going to do quite nicely, I believe, in keeping our copper and our iron ore up and running. Remember, as things spoil, they'll come off the end of the belt here. By the way, if Jellynut spoils in a furnace, it's just going to turn into spoilage and it'll burn out anyway, so there's no problems with that. A couple of issues with this system here that I don't really like is that as there are spoiled items coming down the belt here, that's going to mean that there's less room for the bioflux to keep this process starting. Maybe that's just some early game hiccups, simply due to issues related to the times where the power clicked on or off, or whether we didn't have a steady supply of materials coming down the belt. If things continue to run, then I don't think we're going to have any problems, but there's no guarantees that things will continue to run without no problems. Again, if I'm on another planet, I do not want to have to make a trip back just to solve one little problem. Bots are going to help a significant amount with that issue, but again, let's make these things work well. And in the meantime, we do see an opportunity to increase our power production in a meaningful way. Let's do one more of these big electric poles. The little ones have kind of started to run their course. And probably not a bad time to expand science completely. I will use this one burner at the very end of all things, just to make sure that there's no problems if we ever do run into a power issue, but otherwise, this should be the start of something lovely. Okay, power is actually doing good. Look at this, one boiler and all this steam, and we're doing just fine. That's crazy. It's absolutely insane. Yeah, no issues with our power at this point. I am going to expand that, but then we're going to call it good for a while. Quick trips with seeds to go and replant the forests. And I know it's hard to get a sense of time when I'm doing these jump cuts, but if you look at this, this is all the science we've produced. We've produced about 170 of this agricultural science with a freshness of 40% or more. It's going to be a little bit tough to make sure that we have at least 10 minutes remaining on this freshness by the time that we ship all this back to NowVeast, but for now, this is working pretty okay. And the important thing that I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to say one more time because it bears repeating, is that this is supposed to be a tileable blueprint that I have here. The idea being that it should fit in right about here. It should fit right smack dab there. I've made a couple of changes that have altered this setup a little bit, but once you get this upcoming one in, and after you move this power pole and these a little bit, it should be tileable. And so when I say, wow, I'm not getting my science produced fast enough, or I'm overproducing fruits but I'm not spending it quick enough, then you just throw on another set like there, there, and there. And that's why I've been building from like kind of the south, is I knew that it's tileable in this direction. Again, this, I don't know exactly what the science per minute is. We can take a quick look. At best, I'm guessing that the science per minute has been, at best, maybe like 15 a minute. Let's just check and see. Currently, we're doing about 30 per minute. For the last 10 minutes, we maxed out at about 45 science per minute. That was when we had plenty of throughput production. So one of these tileable sections is going to be about 45, not to mention once you start doing some productivity modules. And so I do like that this system feels like it's going to work out. It's the system I have on my main save. My main save has about 110 hours so far. So far it's working out pretty okay there. This system works. It's not ideal. It's not the best, but we are getting some amount of plates all the way down to the end. What can I say? It's working, folks. It's working for me. And I am just setting this up to where I can get seeds long term. I've just started to sort of run these out here. This will last for a little while, but I don't love to do it this way. Again, automation in a science and automation type of game just feels like the sort of thing to do. So we're going to automate this production and run this line all the way back. And the base is turned off because we are out of product. And I ended up hooking up the Jellynut seed return first because it's just closer. And I just wanted to deal with one less of these return trips before I did anything else. Nice to see we just got our first shipment of the Yumako fruit all the way from these two sections here. It looks like there's still plenty of trees that are growing. We don't need to worry too much about whether or not this will continue. We know it will. Just how we got to help things once again get kickstarted. We'll do it. We'll do it as many times as it takes. Don't you worry. And I didn't realize it, but I was getting really close to these Pentapod eggs hatching on me. About 3-4 minutes left on both of them. Yeah. Pretty important that we still keep the science going. Even if we're not going to use the science, a spoiled science is harmless. But a Pentapod egg could always be disaster. So again, that's why we have this turret here, just in case. Nice to see that this is kicking back on with our iron and copper. And we're going to call that good. Okay, so we now have a system by which the seeds are going to return back along their merry way, back all the way to these two ag towers. Nice to see that they've still got some Yumako seed ready to go. And then we're also getting the seeds back for the Jellynut. So this should be a self-contained system. The only threat to this continuing forward is whether or not we don't have enough material coming through these pipes, through these belts. And really, we talked about whether it's a push or a pull system, whether we are doing an on-demand supply or whether we're just having the belts full. Right now, we couldn't. I mean, right now, we would love to have the belts full. That seems to be a better solution than what we have going on right now. But all the same, I do recognize that maybe it would be even better if we could just have a way to have these plants not be all ready at the exact same time. 100% ready, 100% ready. I guess there is a little bit of overlap. And if they are all ready right now, they are eventually going to get through here. The big issue right now is we don't have stack inserters. Stack inserters would actually help this go much better. It truly would. I could do something like this where I pull off another section and then help feed it into this belt. I don't want to get too greedy with this. I already feel like my little pollution cloud is too big of a deal for me to really feel comfortable with. I am going to have to go and clear out these enemies before they get inside my pollution cloud. But the smaller I can keep the cloud, the better. I've just built a really big system that can handle tons and tons of these resources. There's not a ton going to spoilage except for the nutrients that are currently like in the actual buildings. I think all the rest of the spoilage is nominal. How much spoilage are we creating per minute? That's actually a good question. Let's take a quick peek here. Spoilage per minute. It's been actually a lot higher than I thought it was. 100 plus, and it's really low right now just because we're not working optimally, and so there's not a constant flood, or rather a flushing mechanism with our spoilage. But yeah, it looks like we're capping out at about 100 spoilage per minute. There's probably some ways that we could refine that a little bit more. I don't think that you need 100 spoilage per minute. I think that there's recipes that do require spoilage. I don't think we need it that bad. I truly don't. Let's just double check here. What's the issue? Yumako fruit just coming in right now. How are the pentapods doing? They're angry. They're angry. I'm going to take them now just to make sure that nothing bad happens. How about that? Okay. And let's hope for lots more bioflux in the near future. This video is getting a little bit longer than I originally kind of wanted. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pause here and we're going to do a part 2 for Gleba. at this point, I'm confident that we've already done maybe the hard part, that is get science. I've done a meaningful job in getting some amount of iron and copper produced. I mean, we got, what was that, 700 sitting in a box there, about 900 sitting in a box there. So we're getting the materials necessary. I think it's pretty clear and should be pretty obvious that we're going to be able to make this happen. It's just going to be more of a thought process and how we expand, how we maybe improve upon this design so there's not as many kind of moments waiting. But that's going to be for another video for another day. I think that for now, I can be happy with the amount of progress we have gotten to, starting off with just our bare bones sort of minimum structures, getting into this science producing, this iron and copper producing substance, and then also having our 2 major outposts, knowing that we do have some biters that I'm sure are wanting a piece of us, or some pentapods, some walkers, what have you. But folks, until I see you in the next one, please look after you, look after your friends, look after your family. I'm grateful for the opportunity to play this wonderful game. It is fantastic. My name is Fix Fox. I'm looking so very much forward to seeing you in the next one. Until that time, I'm out.